Yeah,
So you're
but I'm a
here
fan.
funded student
Yeah,
on a
I'm a funded.
scholarship. So do you think you got a scholarship to the United States based on that you're a bright student, based on what you've done? Or why? Why do you think you were funded?
Initially, when I actually was admitted to my program, I didn't have funding.
So how did you get funding?
So what I did was I asked my department. I was like, oh, I I literally have $0 in my bank account, so I cannot afford to do this masters paying out of pocket, obviously. So that's what I told them. So I was like, are there opportunities for funding? And they told me like you can email your professors. So initially I was
I think this is a very important part. She was admitted into a master's program in the United States without funding. You know you can't afford the money to fund yourself.
Mhm,
Then you asked.
mhm.
And when you asked, you were directed to opportunities.
Yeah. So they asked me like maybe you can, but it was not guaranteed obviously. So they maybe you
Nothing is
can.
guaranteed, not even life. Life is not
Yes.
guaranteed.
So so initially when I applied, I had two professors that I really was like, oh, their work is so cool because their work was more focused on community collaboration in the research process. So I was like, it's something that I was really being drawn to when I was doing my undergrad, like civic engagement, community engagement, or co-creation with communities.
Yeah.
So it's something that I was being drawn to. So I was like, definitely these are the people that I want to work with. And yeah, so at that time I actually asked one of my advisors, like, is this a good idea? And they're like, maybe just try and see. I also wasn't hopeful. I I only emailed two professors. And the other one replied. The other one hasn't replied. Yes, but it only takes one response and your life will change. So the other professor replied and they were like, hi, Nyasha, are you free to meet via Zoom? And I just am curious about your interest and your interest in the program. And so we met, and right away we bonded, like not bonded, but I could see how I could definitely work with this person because of their energy matched mine, their interest matched mine. Yeah, it was really a good
That's
conversation.
incredible.
Yeah, so it was a good conversation right away. I was so happy. I was like, I cannot even believe that I was talking to a person who matches my energy and my views and opinions, etc. So now, yeah, and essentially that was it. And I think like a few hours after our call, she sent me an email, was like, Nyasha, I have this grant, a funded grant by the United States Environmental Protection Agency, so the EPA. And this is a project we will be working on. So it's on energy transitions in a Native American community in Michigan. I was like, wow, this is so.
You are back in Zimbabwe during this period?
No, I was at school. I was
Oh,
still.
you've resumed school?
So this was my final semester at school.
Oh, you were still in Ghana.
Yes. So
Oh
this
my
was.
God. So you are proactive. You've been making these applications even before you graduated.
Yeah. So I was definitely like that was around February, and I graduated in June.
I see.
Yeah. So yeah. So and then she was like, I was like, of course. And then she also advised me. She was like, from the way you were describing your interests, I think the other program that we have, which is Sustainable Communities. So initially, I applied for the Energy and Policy program,
Yeah.
Masters in Energy and Policy program. She was like, it's more flexible, so you'll be able to even go with the policy track or go with other things. And this one also is more flexible because I'm not only restricted to social science classes, so I take geoscience classes, and then I can merge like engineering techniques and social science techniques to solve a problem. So that's what I was really interested in.
That's
Yes.
interesting.
Yeah. So she was like, I think this matches your interest, so let me know. And I thought, I was like, oh, so when I applied, I didn't know that there was that program.
Ah,
Yes. So she was like, okay, I'll move your admission. So in the next couple of days, I received another admission to that program. And then that one year funding. That's how it happened. Literally, I think
that sounds like
it's
a miracle, but there's a miracle with an effort.
yeah, I wouldn't call it a miracle. I think it's a combination of effort and luck,
Yeah.
obviously, because you can be passionate as I am, but if there's no opportunity, then maybe you're not going to, like, there's no opportunity to get. So it was just like a combination of me putting effort and reaching out, and also there was an opportunity. So I think it's a combination of luck and effort.
There's a story you say you were about to tell me before we started shooting this video. I want you to tell that story.
Which one?
How many stories do you want to share
About
you?
no, like no, I think it was related to to me applying for the program.
For Mastercard?
No, for the USAP. Because the USAP is the one that helped me with applying to universities. So actually, when I was applying for universities, I actually applied for universities here in the US. Yes, and the one that I got into, some declined me. I see you.
I mean, that happens very often. That's no stranger. Oh.
And then the other ones that accepted me didn't give me full funding. So I think always, like, the way I operated since I was in high school was like, if it's not going to be fully funded, I don't want any financial stress when I'm doing my education. I think I've always turned that down. So I think that was my strategy. So yeah, and so when I was applying, so the story that I wanted to tell, like, it's just like a funny story, like, to just tell, like, I almost never applied to like that USAP because of like some things, because I think I needed this like, maybe you can call it a transcript, your O-level transcript.
Yeah.
And essentially is, so at that time, like, you have like something that is not really official. You're just given that from your school so that you'll be able to apply for A-level studies, right? And then maybe a couple years after, like 2 years after, then you'll be able to get like a real certificate. So that paper or whatever it is, like a substitute for the certificate before you get the actual certificate. So because it's only one copy, so I applied with it when I applied for that high school admission for my A-levels. So it was in the office, like one of their offices, like where they keep students' documents. So when I wanted that to photocopy it, I had to go there, and I couldn't see my I couldn't see I couldn't see mine. I saw all of my classmates see, but I couldn't see yours. I couldn't see, like, I literally stayed for, like, I think for the whole week, like going every day after my classes, and I couldn't see it. And then this other time I went again and then saw it. It was kind of folded, but it was in the same pile.
Well, you are meant to be here, I guess.
Yeah.
Now you are in the United States.
Yeah.
Last year, you joined your program to COP28 in Dubai. You participated in the Conference of Parties where they discussed climate issues and climate policies. And this is handled by the UNFCCC, right?
Yeah, UNFCCC, yeah.
Yeah, so what happened at COP from your experience? And from what I know, it was your first COP.
Yeah, and I think that was like a highlight, because I think even before I came to Michigan Tech, I always, like, because I was already like in the climate advocacy space, and seeing my peers going to COP, I was like, how do people go to that conference? Because it seemed like if you are like into like climate advocacy, it was like,
that's the global meeting point.
It was like a platform where it's like, okay, let's say you are starting out, you go to this small conference, and that is like the ultimate. That's how I saw it. So I was like, how do people go there? Like, no one really gave me answers. And then one of these days, I just received an email in from one of the faculty, from our department. It was like, hello everyone, I know you are new graduate students and you are getting ready to come to do your studies here. We are so excited to work with you, and next fall I'll be teaching a class on climate policy for graduate students, and you are welcome to join the class, and essentially as part of the class you've got COP. So I was like, oh my god. So I think that was, I literally was like, wow, there are a lot of opportunities in the US than, for example, when I was in Ghana, because I'm like, how easy is it to just be like, I'm not even looking for this
You're just a
opportunity.
student in a class.
I'm just a student in a
And
class,
as part of your
and
class, you go
as
for
part
COP.
of my class, I'll be able to go to COP. I wish this kind of opportunities also are available to
So
students in
let's
Africa.
talk about COP.
Yeah.
Now, as a Zimbabwean who has lived in Ghana, you're in the United States. What conversations at COP caught your interest?
So I think because I'm a research assistant for a project that is working on a energy transition challenge or problem in a predominant Native American community, I think that is what has caught my interest while I'm doing my studies. So just learning about the history of Native Americans, and then beyond that, just learning about indigenous people around the world, because they are marginalized, and therefore they are also disproportionately impacted by climate change, just like other marginalized groups like Black people, people of color, Africans, low-income communities.
You're talking about marginalized people. I want to ask you a question. There are many sides to this, the answers to this question, but I just want to create a scenario and just get your opinion. Now, the whole world, there's something called Anthropocene as a measure of when the world started degrading. And this as far back as some say it was during slavery, some say the French Industrial Revolution. There are different timelines of the degradation of the climate or the environment. Now, the West, I'm talking about the United States, North America, I'm talking about the Europeans, have created massive growth, massive infrastructural development through burning fossil fuel, through so many actions that degrade the environment. Now, places like Zimbabwe is trying to grow in its infrastructural development. Places like Nigeria is trying to grow in infrastructural development, and the conversations of sustainable energy, green energy, sustainable environment are ongoing. And this conversation requires the avoidance of fossil fuel, the transition to green energy, which is more expensive. How do you, from a global perspective, how do you as a Zimbabwean think Zimbabwe or Nigeria has crude oil, and crude oil is the main source of income. How do you think these countries should engage in their development in this context?
Yeah, that is a good question. I think it's a good question because I think that's what I'm even studying right now. Of course, we want many communities to transition to sustainable or clean energy sources, because we know that a third of the emissions that causes climate change come from the energy industry or burning fossil fuels, for example. So I think when you are looking at African countries, developing countries, Nigeria, Zimbabwe, etc., I think that, of course, I think we should be afforded to be able to develop our economies.
How can we balance that
And
with the quest for sustainable
not even
environment?
looking about the West, I'm thinking like just looking at our economies. I think we should be afforded to be able to develop. And I think we all know that if you want to develop a community, you need energy, right? So the way I see it is that I think in as much as we want to transition to renewables, I think it should be done in a manner that is equitable, in a manner that is just,
Were these conversations had at
right?
COP?
Yes. So it should be done in a way that is just, because if you are just going to say no more for burning of fossil fuels in Nigeria right now, how many people are going to lose jobs? How is the economy going to be affected? Right.
Yeah.
So I think seeing that this is the end goal, where we want to go, we want our economies to be more sustainable, regenerative, and this is where we are. So how can we transition to this other point? So I think it should be a slow, or it should be a sustainable transition, which is going to be equitable to sustainable energy resources. But also, I think one thing that I also want to speak about with that issue is that I think we tend to think too much about the effects of climate change, for example, right?
But I think we should because I mean, if the
Of
climate
course,
collapse,
I think okay. The point I'm trying to drive is,
yeah,
people tend to like talk about burning of fossil fuels in African countries, from a point of perspective of they cause, like, it will lead to like future impacts, right?
yeah.
So it's not really, of course, like right now we know like there are a lot of people, like there are a lot of effects that we are already seeing, but we anticipate more impact, like more negative impact in the future, right? But you will see that right now when you're burning fossil fuels, people are already dying from air pollution, right? So for example, I have to cross check that, but in 2019, just in 2019, across Africa, 1.9 million people died
I mean,
from,
even in Nigeria in 2022, there was flooding, massive flooding that displaced about 2 million people.
yeah. So
Just 2022, not too long ago.
yeah, so I mean like 1.9 million people died from air quality related problems. Yes. So I know that, yes, I think I wish, when you're talking about African context, would also, so politicians were like, oh, we want to grow our economies, we want to grow our economy, so that's why we're burning fossil fuels. Yes, that is a valid argument. But another valid argument is, while you're burning, while you're burning those fossil fuels, you are also impacting the communities that live in proximity to fossil fuels.
But from the thing we've always known, apart from that direct environment, the consequences of our actions on the environment doesn't just happen right now. It happens somewhere in the future. The consequences we are facing today, the flooding, the terrible environments and all this kind of the natural disasters that we're facing today, could be consequences of explorations that have happened over the years.
Yeah.
And these explorations have been led by the West. Do you think that the West needs to compensate, let's say, some people in Nigeria? Do you think there should be some sort of compensation?
What do you mean compensation?
It could be compensation through financial opportunities. It could be compensation through any means. Anything like. Do you think that the West should tell us sorry for what we've done to the environment? Do you think that should be the conversations when we talk about climate sustainability?
Yeah, I think one thing that is for sure is, Africa has contributed less to climate change. So it has contributed less than 4% of the cumulative emissions. So definitely we are less responsible for climate change compared to other continents or other parts of the world, like for example the United States, right? So I think definitely more other people cause climate change more than the others. But also when you see right now, you see that most African communities are most vulnerable. Like, for example, where I come from in Zimbabwe, like Zimbabwe has been, and what do you call, being impacted by the El Nino droughts for a long period now, like as early as I can remember, like since I was in high school.